Good morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering natural health, and your Wednesday morning rise and shine. And this morning here, we're looking at a topic: venture capitalists investing in ambulance service. Venture capitalists investing in ambulance services. What we're looking at here this morning as we do our live talk program. And so I have two articles I want to share with you and to talk about these things that are happening. So hopefully you had a blessed night rest and you have some energy to take on today. And let us pray. Our Father who art in heaven, we thank thee again for your love. Thank you for the blessings, dear Lord, of your word, for the blessings, dear Lord, of knowing thee. Pray that you may be with us, dear Father, as we learn of these things and think on how to live and how to move in this world. May you bless us, we pray, for Christ's sake. Amen. So we're looking at this topic here: venture capitalists investing in ambulance service. And this is what we're looking at here this morning, and that will be the second article that I'll share with you this morning here as we look at this natural health and talk about things that affect our health. But before I go into that main article, which is a long article from Kaiser News Network, I'm going to be sharing this short piece from NBCnews.com with my Maggie Fox, and it's some new development with tick, and allergies, and it's entitled "Unexplained Allergy Attack." It might be the meat, all right. So it might be the meat, but it's not really fully the meat. It's a combination of two things. Here goes the article: people who have serious but mysterious allergy attack might be suffering from a meat allergy caused by a tick bite, government researchers says. So that's kind of a twist of events here. The meat allergy is being triggered by a tick biting a person. They've been running a study on unexplained attacks of anaphylactic shock, the life-threatening response to true allergy. Close to 10% of people recruited so far for the study turn out to have an allergy that's transmitted by a tick. Alpha-gal allergy appeared to be yet another reason to protect oneself from tick bites. So alpha-gal is the name of the allergy, Phagal-Gal. And this is stated by Antonio Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. Food allergies can range from an inconvenient to a life-threatening condition and pose a serious and growing public health problem that urgently requires more research. The tick, called a Lone Star tick, can carry a sugar molecule that humans don't have, called galactose, A13 galactose, and or alpha-gal, which is normally they shorten it by just simply calling it alpha-gal. Many mammals, but not humans, also carry this sugar in their bodies. So it is found in red meat, beef, pork, venison, rabbit, and even some dairy products. Most people don't have a problem eating it as the food gets digested, but a tick bite triggers an immune response. One theory on how a tick bite can transmit an allergy: when the tick transmits alpha-gal in its bite, immune cells react to it. That set the stage for an allergic reaction the next time the person eats red meat. So what I'm assuming is going on here is that the body start responding to this agent that was put directly into the blood. So somehow when it goes through the digestive tract, it doesn't affect us in a negative way. But when it goes straight into the blood, the immune system starts to guess work to rid the body of this alpha-gal, and then it now creates an allergic reaction, a swelling, so to speak. Inflammatory process kicks into place. The team studying unexplained allergic attack found that 6 out of 70 people they studied so far had an alpha-gal allergy. When they stopped eating red meat, their attacks stopped. It's hard to diagnose alpha gal allergy because it doesn't cause the same symptoms that most allergies do. The researchers said allergic reaction to peanut, for instance, and shellfish begin about 5 minutes to half an hour after someone eats or breathe in the food. It takes several hours for a reaction to meet. However, this usual long time gap between a meal and an allergic reaction is probably a big reason that alpha gal allergies are often initially misdiagnosed, says Dr. Dean Metcalf. If you start to have trouble breathing in the middle of the night, you're probably not going to blame the burger you had for dinner. It's not known how common alpha gal allergies is. In 2016, Dr. Scott Cummins of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, said he had identified 3,500 cases. We often think of tick as carriers of infectious diseases, such as Lyme disease, but the research strongly suggests that bites from this particular species of tick can lead to this unusual allergy, says Dr. Melody Carter, who helps lead the study. The association is increasingly clear, but we still need to discover exactly how these two events are linked and why some people with similar exposure to tick bites seem to be more prone to developing alpha gal allergies than others. About half of all cases of anaphylactic as no clear cause, Carter team said. These cases are called idiopathic anaphylaxis. There are no cure or long-term preventive therapy for patients with recurring episodes of idiopathic anaphylaxis, they wrote. But ticks are causing more and more diseases. Lyme disease is becoming increasingly common, but so are rare tick-borne diseases such as the Heartland and Bourbon viruses, respectively. A team at the Center of Disease Control and Prevention reported this week that they found Bourbon disease in several batches of tick collected in Missouri. 2 people have been diagnosed with Bourbon virus infection, and in 2014, there was 1 reported death as a result of the virus in Kansas. It's the first time the virus has been found in Missouri, in a species of tick known to aggressively bite humans, they reported. Tick-borne diseases are becoming a serious problem in the United States as people increasingly build homes in formerly uninhabited wilderness area where ticks and other animal hosts live. And so that's something new. That's a new development that is happening when it comes on to tick bite. And it's kind of a strange development, but interesting how they are able to track it down, almost like they're investigating a crime, and figure out that the tick bites the person, and as the tick bites the person, it leaves this alpha gal inside of the person. Then the person now will eat meat, but unlike most, what you will call the most allergic reaction, the person will have it within half an hour, within minutes to half an hour of eating the product or inhaling the product. This time doesn't happen like that. It takes hours for it to kick in. So as I say, you could have a meal at 12 o'clock, and then in the evening you're having shortness of breath, you're having problem breathing, and you're wondering what's happening. All that's happening is that you have an allergic reaction now to red meat or meat in general, and now this reaction is going to be hard to track down because you're having it hours after the meal eaten. And so many people are having anaphylaxis, attacks based upon this. And as I say, 1 person in Kansas has died. And so this is what's happening. So this is a type of development that is important to watch. And most naturally, as we interact with nature, it's important to do whatever you can to not get bitten by ticks, because more and more the ticks are carrying diseases that are dangerous to us, and weird diseases. As I was reading, trying to do a quick read on the Bourbon virus, and it's a virus that gives a lot of the common symptoms like nausea, fever, and all that. But it's just one more disease that can be transmitted by a tick bite. So be careful out there as you interact and move around in nature, anywhere that there's a tick or with animals that will pick up ticks, so that you don't get bitten, because, as I say, the tick is carrying, it seems, more and more weird diseases. So what I'm going to look at here now, which is the main thing I want to talk about for the rest of the morning, is this article here by Kaiser Health News, and it is and I entitled what I'm talking about here this morning is venture capitalists investing in ambulance services. So venture capitalists investing in ambulance service is what I'm looking at here this morning. And so I have this article I want to share. It's a long article, lots of information. So I'm sharing this because I think it's important for us not only to hear the information, but to talk about some of these things. This article here is entitled "Taken for a Ride. Ambulance stick patients with surprise bills." Ambulance stick patients with surprise bills. One patient got a $3,660 bill for a 4-mile ride. Another was charged $8,460 for a trip from one hospital that could not handle his case to another that could. Still another found herself marooned at an out-of-network hospital where she had been taken by ambulance without her consent. These patients all took ambulances in emergencies and got slammed with unexpected bills. Public outrage has erupted over surprise medical bills, given out-of-network charges that a patient did not expect or could not control, prompting 21 states to pass laws protecting consumers in some situations. But these laws largely ignore ground ambulance ride, which can leave patients stuck with hundreds or even thousands of dollars in bills with few options for recovery. Find a Kaiser Health News review of 350 consumer complaints in 32 states. Patients usually choose to go to the doctor, but they are vulnerable when they call 911 or get into an ambulance. The dispatcher picks the ambulance crew, which in turn often pick the hospital. Moreover, many ambulances are not summoned by patients. Instead, the crew arrives at the scene having heard about an accident on a scanner, or because police or a bystander call 911. Betsy Imholtz, Special Project Director at the Consumer Union, which has collected over 700 patient stories about surprise medical bills, said at least a quarter concern ambulances. It's a huge problem. 40 years ago, most ambulances were free for patients, provided by volunteers or town fire departments using taxpayer money, says Jay Fitch, president of Fitch and Associates, an emergency service consulting firm. Today, ambulances are increasingly run by private companies and venture capital firms. Ambulance providers now often charge by the mile and sometimes for each service, like providing oxygen. If the ambulance is staffed by a paramedic rather than an emergency medical technician, that will result in higher charges, even if the patients didn't need paramedic level services. Charges range widely from zero to thousands of dollars, depending on billing practices. And so, if you notice there, in this beginning of the article, they introduced this idea that venture capitalist firms and also a lot of private companies are running ambulance services. So, as you know, with venture capitalist firm, the aim of doing business is that they try to find businesses that they can make massive return on their investment, because the venture capitalists or vulture capitalists are companies that would normally know that they'll invest in 10 companies knowing that Now, out of the 10 companies, probably 8 or 9 will fail, but one will make such phenomenal money that it will cover the cost of the others that fail. So just imagine that concept, and then you take that concept to ambulance service. So you see, as I said here, call comes in because somebody is in an accident. Somebody sees the accident driving by, call 911, said there's a accident on the northbound side of such and such a road. The ambulance scanners pick it up. They run to the service. They come to help those who are sick and those who are injured. But this ambulance service now is, say, imagine, is running by a venture capitalist firm. And so whatever is going to be the cost, and even for reasonable profit, that normally would be associated with the ambulance drive, that is gone, because now what you have is a venture capitalist firm is looking to make phenomenal profits of those that are sick and suffering. So this is, to me, part of the whole idea of is it necessary to take capitalism to this level where now you have a vulture that is just swimming around trying to make phenomenal profit of people who are suffering or people who are in accidents. This is, to me, is a very terrible development that I'll be sharing for the rest of the time here with you. So the core of the problem is that ambulance and private insurance companies often can't agree on a fair price, so the ambulance service doesn't join the insurance network. That leaves the patient stuck in the middle with out-of-network charges that are not negotiated, Imholz said. Now, think about this idea here again with me. Even if there is an insurance company that is involved, and the insurance company and the ambulance, are part of a network, it's still part of the problem that we're having because, well, if the insurance company said, we'll cover all the costs, and for a 4-mile trip, you take a 4-mile trip to the hospital, and the ambulance service charge, as the article says, $3,600. So $3,600. Is it even still fair for the ambulance service to, for the insurance company to pay those type of costs? And if the insurance company say we're going to pay 70% of the cost, that still is a lot of money. How can you say, well, that is still reasonable, where the insurance company is going to still be paying almost $3,000 for a 4-mile trip? This is the type of stuff that's happening that is like, great. Everything, as I said, this is a free market, free country, so everything should be done for profitability. But when does things get to a point of view where you say, well, the sick and suffering should not always be subjected to this type of just greed and just uncaring, no love for those who are suffering? Well, continue again. This happens to patients frequently, according to one recent study of over 500,000 ambulance trips taken by patients with private insurance in 2014. The study found that 26% of these trips were billed on an out-of-network basis. That figure is quite jarring, says Lauren Adler, Associate Director for the U.S. C. Brookins Schaefer Initiative and co-author for recent research on surprise billing. The Kaiser Health News review of complaints revealed 2 common scenarios leaving patients in debt. First, patients get in an ambulance after a 911 call. Second, an ambulance transfers them between hospitals. In both scenarios, patients later learn the fee is much higher because the ambulance was out of network, and after their insurers pay what it deems fair, they get a surprise bill for the balance, also known as a balance bill. The Better Business Bureau has received nearly 1,200 consumer complaints about ambulances in the past 3 years. Half were related to billing and 46 mentioned out-of-network charges, spokeswoman Catherine Hutt said. While the federal government set reimbursement rates for patients on Medicare and Medicaid, it does not regulate ambulance fees for patients with private insurance. In the absence of federal rules, those patients are left with a fragmented system in which the cost of a similar ambulance ride can vary widely from town to town. There are about 14,000 ambulance services across the country, run by government, volunteers, hospitals, and private companies, according to the American Ambulance Association. For a glimpse into the unpredictable, fragmented system, consider the case of Roman Barche. Barche, the 46-year-old software engineer who lived in Brooklyn, New York, was visiting a friend in Boston's suburb of Chestnut Hill last November when he took a nasty fall. Barce felt a sharp pain in his chest and back and had trouble walking. An ambulance crew responded to a 911 call at the house and drove him 4 miles to Brigham and Women's Hospital, taking his blood pressure as he lay down in the back. Doctors there determined he had sprained tendons and ligaments and a bruised foot and released him after about 4 hours, he said. After Barce returned to Brooklyn, he got a bill total $3,660, which is $915 for each mile of an ambulance ride. His insurance had paid nearly half, leaving him to pay the remaining $1,890. So just think about that number. $915 a mile. So for every mile they drove this gentleman here, Barce, they charged him $915 a mile. And what he had was, he had sprained, basically, his foot and bruised it. And I guess in all that pain, he had some pain in his chest and he probably panicked. And instead of going to a taxi or get his friend to drive him there or hitchhike to the hospital, he called the ambulance and it cost him $915 a mile. Now, if you look at the $915 a mile, you think about it because you're not looking, you're listening to me. Think about that number in your mind, put up a thought bubble there. And as you put up a thought bubble, just think about it and say to yourself, if you were a part of a venture capitalist company and you saw that number, wouldn't you want to buy into this ambulance service? I mean, that's phenomenal money. If you can charge somebody $915 a mile, I think the government only reimburse businesses or give them tax write-off for 50 cents or 50-something cents a mile. That's phenomenal rate of return. And I think that's the reason why these venture capitalist companies are getting into the ambulance business, because that's phenomenal business. You could just buy an ambulance company and then start making some real profit. So this is the type of wickedness that's going on in our country. Now, here, the ambulance service, the insurance company paid now for Barce's bill, half of it, $1,890. That's all they were going to pay. That's all they deemed was even necessary, which is still phenomenal. That's still about $400 and some per mile. You know, that's real serious money right there. So Barce said, I thought it was a mistake, but Fallon Ambulance Service, a private company, was out of network for his United Healthcare insurance plan. The cost is outrageous, says Barce. So he says the cost is outrageous. And he says he was reluctant. He reluctantly paid $1,890.50 after Fallon sent him to a collection agencies. If he had known what the ride would cost, he said he would at least have been able to refuse and crawl to the hospital himself, which would be cheaper because you could crawl for 4 miles, I guess. You feel horrible to send a patient bill like that, says Peter Rassicott, Senior Vice President of Fallon, a family-owned company based outside Boston. But ambulance companies are severely underfunded by Medicaid and Medicare, says Rassicott. Said, so Fallon must balance the books by charging higher rates for patients with private insurance company. So basically, they're just charging based upon balancing their books. Now, you think about that, right? A few years ago, if you said to the mafia, the type of business you should get into is not illegal stuff, it is the is ambulance service, they probably laugh at you, but not knowing that they're missing out on some good racketeering right here. So Rassicat and his company, which is family owned, has not contracted with Barca insurers because they couldn't agree on a fair rate. When insurers and ambulance companies can't agree, he said, unfortunately, the subscriber wind up with them in the middle. It's also unrealistic to expect EMTs and paramedics at the scene of an emergency to determine whether the company takes a patient's insurance. Rassicat added, ambulance services have to charge enough to subsidize the cost of keeping crews ready around the clock, even if no calls come in, says Fitch, the ambulance consultant. A third of the cases were where an ambulance crew answered a call. He added they ended up not transporting anyone, and the company typically isn't reimbursed for the trip. In part, Barcy had bad luck. If the injury had happened just a mile away inside of Boston city limits, he would have ridden a city ambulance, which would have charged $1,490 according to Boston EMS, a sum that his insurance would probably have covered in full. So again, look at this number here. So just 1 mile. So if he had known, all he had to do was, as he felt the pain in his chest, which wouldn't be advisable because he could have really been suffering from some heart problem, all he had to do was not really crawl for 4 miles. All he had to do is crawl for 1 more mile, close that gap, and then call 911 when he crossed that 1 mile ticker tape. And as he went there, then he would have gotten the bill now for less than half of what it cost. So then there's something wrong with that whole scenario if they would have charged even less if it was just 1 mile more. So you can start seeing the numbers and crunch numbers. You see that there's something definitely wrong here. Very few states have laws limiting ambulance charges, and most states' laws that protects patients from surprise billing do not apply to ground ambulance ride, according to attorney Brian Werfile, consultant to the American Ambulance Association. And none of the state's surprise billing protection applies to people with self-funded employer-sponsored health insurance plan, which are regulated only by federal law. That's a huge exception. 61% of private insured employees are covered by self-funded employer-sponsored plans. So that's a very important thing to note here, because many people work for large companies that they are self-funded employer-sponsored plan or privately insured employees. And so they're saying here that none of the state's surprise billing protection applies to people with self-funded employer-sponsored health insurance plan. So that means for all the people who have these type of plans, they're going to always be in a surprise when they get a bill, not knowing that what's happening here is that that type of system, there's no consumer protection or federal protection from them. The laws that are passed, you're kind of on your own if you're self-insured, so to speak. Some towns that hire private companies to respond to 911 calls may regulate fees and prohibit balance billing, Werfel said, but each locality is different. Insurance companies try to protect patients from balance billing by negotiating rates with ambulance companies, says Catherine Donaldson, spokeswoman for the American Health Insurance Plan, but some ambulance companies have been resisting to join plan networks when insurance companies offer Medicare-based rates, she says. So most naturally, that would make sense because they could get higher rates. Medicare rates vary widely by geographic area. On average, ambulance service make a small profit on Medicare payment, according to a report by the U.S. Government Accountable Office. If a patient uses a basic life support ambulance in an emergency, in an urban area, for instance, Medicare payment ranges from $324 to $453 plus $7.27 per mile. Medicaid rate tend to be significantly lower. There's evidence of waste and fraud in the ambulance industry, Donaldson added, citing a 2015 study from the Office of Inspector General at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The report concluded Medicaid paid over $50 million in improper ambulance bills, including for supposedly emergency level transport that ended at a nursing home, not a hospital. 1 in 5 ambulance services had questionable billing practices, the report says. So if you notice the number here, that the Medicare payment is $324 to $453 plus $7.29 per mile. So in this payment, according to the Kaiser Health news here, they're still saying that even that payment per trip, the ambulance companies still make a profit. It's just a small profit. So if you have Medicare paying that amount of money and Medicaid paying even slightly less, and at that rate, the ambulance companies still make a profit. It's just a small profit. Then imagine now when Marseille had gotten a $3,900 and something bill. That's a huge profit. So they're basically saying, when we do the business and we do Medicaid, Medicare, we get a small profit. We make up that difference by just ballooning the price that we give to somebody that is private, and we're going to really hit them hard. And as I say, I can see why now a venture capitalist company will get into the ambulance service and want to buy ambulance services, because you could still make a profit of Medicaid, Medicare, small, but you're going to really rack it up when you hit a person privately. And yet they're saying 1 in 5 ambulance services are doing fraudulent billing. Most complaints reviewed by Kaiser Health News did not appear to involve fraudulent charges. Instead, patients got caught in a system in which ambulance services can legally charge thousands of dollars for a single trip, even when the trip starts at an in-network hospital. That's what happened to Davin Hall, a 67-year-old retired postal inspector in Northern California. While he faces stage 3 prostate cancer, Hall is also fighting a $7,109.70 out-of-network ambulance bill from American Medical Response, the nation's largest ambulance provider. In December 27, 2016, Hall went to a local hospital with a rectal bleeding. Since the hospital didn't have the right specialist to treat his symptoms, it arranged for an ambulance ride to another hospital about 20 miles away. Even though the hospital was in network, the ambulance was not. Hall was stunned to see that AMR billed $8,460 for the trip. His federal health plan, the Special Agent Mutual Benefit Association, paid $1,350, and Hall responsible for $727 record show. The health plan paid the amount because AMR charges exceed its Medicare base fee schedule, according to its explanation of benefits. But AMR turned over his case to a debt collector, Credence Resource Management, which sent an August 25 notice seeking a full balance of the $7,109. The remaining that was not paid by his health plan. Now, this is significant to me as we continue here, because if you think about it, he had a federal health plan, and so you would think, well, that's great. He has a good plan. He has a plan through the government, and yet still, they only were going to pay $1,350. That's all they thought it was there. And then he was under the $727. Now he found that he had to pay not just $727, but $7,000 of the rest of the bill. Continue going. These charges are exorbitant. I just don't think what AMR is doing is right. Said all, noticing that he had intentionally sought treatment at an in-network hospital. He has spent months on the phone calling the hospital, his insurer, and AMR trying to resolve the matter. Given his prognosis, he worries about leaving his wife with a legal fight and a lien on their Brentwood, California house for a debt they shouldn't owe. So just think about that. He's sick with prostate cancer. He's having bleeding in his rectum. And he's worried that he probably will die. He has rectal bleeding. And he's worried that he's probably going to die and leave his wife with a fight off a $7,000 lien against their house. And he went to an in-network hospital, and then he was sent somewhere else, and only was supposed to be surprised. Again, you could see why, not morally, but greed-wise, why venture capitalist company would jump in at the opportunity to get into the ambulance service or buy ambulance services, because they can do this type of phenomenon. Because again, for that trip, probably the insurance company was right. Probably the trip was only worth $1,300. So this is legal now. This is not illegal work they're doing. They're legally charging this type of money. And this is the result. After being contacted by Kaiser Health News, AMR said it had pulled Hall's case from collection while it reviews the billing. After further review, company spokesman Jason Sorick said the charges were warranted because it was a critical care transport which requires specialized nurse and equipment on board. Sorick faulted Hall's health plan for underpaying and said Hall could receive a discount if he qualifies for AMR's compassionate care program based on his financial and medical situation. In this case, it appeared the patient's insurance company simply made up a price they wanted to pay. So if you think about this before we keep going, that the health insurance company here now, they are saying, look, we were underpaid because we had to have some specialists on board for a 20-mile trip. So you have a 20-mile trip and they're doing, $8,000 plus for a 20-mile trip. And they're saying for all that specialists there, they're charging, I guess it's better than the previous 4-mile trip, because the 4-mile trip was, I think, $900 and something. They're charging $400 and something per mile now for that trip, for a few minutes down the road. Fascinating stuff. In July, a California law went into effect that protect consumers. California law went into effect that protect consumers from surprise medical bills from out-of-network provider, including some ambulance transport between hospitals. But Hall's cases occurred before that, and the state law doesn't apply to his federal insurance plan. The Consumer Complaint Review by Kaiser Health revealed a wide variety of ways the patients are left fighting big bills. An older patient in California said debt collectors call incessantly, including on Sunday mornings and at night, demanding an extra $500 on top of the $1,000 that his insurance had paid for an ambulance trip. So they call Sunday morning. Can you imagine Sunday morning? Sunday morning you get a call and you think, oh man, this is a family member, probably something is going bad. And nope, they blasting you all in the morning. 2 ambulance services responding to a New Jersey man's 911 call when he felt burning in his chest. One charged him $2,100 for treating him on the scene for less than 30 minutes, even though he never rode in that company's ambulance. A woman who rolled over in her Jeep in Texas received a bill of $26,000, $26,400, and for what is called a trauma activation fee, a fee triggered when the ambulance service called ahead to the emergency department to assemble a trauma team. The woman who did not require trauma care fought the hospital to get the fee waived. So that's one of the interesting things. So you've seen this all the time. And you're thinking, oh, beautiful. Oh, splendid. Oh, gracious. The person roll over, they're trapped in the car, and they have to probably cut them out. And then they have a lot of ambulances and services there. So what they heard on the scanner that, wow, it's a bad accident. So they call it and say, you think we should assemble a trauma team? So imagine the police or the dispatcher or whoever says, yeah, assemble a trauma team, bring us some specialists because we're probably going to have to do some work right on the scene. Great. But then this lady said she didn't take a ride in the ambulance, she didn't use the ambulance service. She didn't require any trauma care. That's what she said. And so now she has to get, because the trauma team was there, just to assemble the team, bring the team to the scene of the accident, I guess they probably rode her back to the hospital without giving her any care. $26,000. That's some fascinating numbers. You just try to crunch those numbers because most actually you'd have to have probably a emergency room nurse there, and if they had to have an emergency room doctor in the ambulance, plus the EMT and probably another driver. So for 4 people, and say it took them 4 hours, just give it an extra pad for 4 hours, $26,000. I'm just padding it. I don't even know if it would be 4 hours. So if you do that number, if you know 4 hours worth of work is like $6,600 per hour, that's some financial, serious type of money. You can see why a Wall Street firm would say we got to get into this ambulance services. We got to buy a few of these things because this is we can legally charge, and somebody's going to say, well, it's what the market demands. It's what the normal talk here in America. They will say, well, if the market demands it, then the market can bear the price. That's what they say. What is fair? A reasonable price. A reasonable price is whatever the market will bear. So if the market will bear these type of exorbitant price, $6,600 an hour, and say they get the team together, drive to the scene of the accident, take the person, drive back, $600 something. If the market will bear it, great, because this is a consumer-driven society. If the consumer is willing to pay that, then you charge them. Weird type of development here, but we can see how capitalism, without a heart, but people say, well, that's an American way. It's like American, like apple pie. I guess it's somewhere in the Constitution. That's how we're supposed to treat our fellow human beings when they're sick and when they're in pain. This is where it's at. Fascinating stuff. Now, in other cases, patients face financial hardship when ambulance take them to out-of-network hospitals. Patients don't always have a choice in where to seek care. That's up to the ambulance crew and depends on protocol written by the medical director of each ambulance service, says Werfel. The Ambulance Association consultant, Sarah Wilson, a 36-year-old microbiologist, had a seizure at her grandmother's house in rural Ohio on March 18, 2016. The day after having hip surgery at Akron City Hospital. When her husband called 911, the private ambulance crew that responded refused to take her back to Akron City Hospital, instead driving her at an out-of-network hospital that was 22 miles closer. Wilson refused care because the hospital was out of network, she said. Wilson wanted to leave, but I was literally trapped in my stretcher without the crutches she needed to walk. She said, Her husband, who had followed by car, wasn't allowed to see her straight right away. She ended up leaving against medical advice at 4 a.m. She landed in collections for a 202 hospital bill for a medical exam which damaged her credit score. Ken Joseph, chief paramedic of the Emergency Medical Transport Inc., the private ambulance company that transported Wilson, said company protocol is to take patient to the closest appropriate facility. Serving a wide rural area with just 2 ambulances, the company has to get each ambulance back to its station quickly so it can be ready for the next call. Patients like Wilson are often left to battle bills alone because there's no federal protection for patients with private insurance. So no protection. So somebody could say, well, I have private insurance. There's no protection. This is significant before we close out this article here, and because it baffles, because why I'm mentioning this thing about this whole idea of capitalism and so forth, because it's baffled me why is so much of what is related to for the health and the well-being health-wise of the society is left up to all this private, to me, like a net or like a puzzle. It is like one of those, not puzzle, but the thing that you walk through the maze. This is how the health is. And most of the reason why the health in America, to me, from what I've observed over the years, is the way it is. It has something to do with this basically mesmerism and fascination with everything has to be about profit. It has to be capitalistic based. And it's almost a hate that Americans have for the idea that there are probably some things in life, some services in life, that it's best not to be left up to market demand or greedy people. And that's, to me, is a fascinating thing, because if you notice here, so much of the health that people get, they have to get it through their work. They just can't go and buy health insurance from, say, a non-profit institution that is just there to serve. And after the year's end, there's no profitability that's supposed to come of it. And, I know the psyche in most Americans, they'll be like, okay, I'm done here. I can't listen anymore. They'll be like, no, I can't listen anymore because this is socialism you're talking about. But I don't understand, why would it be such a hard thing to contemplate that when it comes on to people medical care, that everything should not always be, well, the idea here in America is, well, let the rich live and let the poor die. And if you don't have no money, well, suck it up. It's a weird thing, because then you get these type of weird article you're reading to you like, why did they suffer like this? Why is it necessary to take this kind of idea that America and capitalism, or America and cowboy running crazy, or mafia running crazy, running ambulance service is a great idea? Why is that a great idea? And I know probably an American will probably one day explain to me why. One of these flag draping that wrap themselves in flags every day. Because to me, it's weird, because I'm like, why go through all of this pain, and why allow everything has to always be there? Now, I understand if you have a system that was just the system, and then somebody wanted to go and say, well, we want to offer better services, so we're going to start a private system, so you have competition. But I think some things need to be protected by the taxpayers and their vote. Some things does not need to be allowed for venture capitalism, vultures and various different sharks that is only about profit and massive profit to always get involved. Because I think this is where the problem is. But I know for many Americans, the moment you start saying that, they almost want to pull their gun and want to shoot you, because they think, nope, you can't, don't never question this idea that everything should not be at the BS and not at the mercy at capitalism and just big money. But that's where we are. So, continue reading the article here. Representative Lloyd Doggett is a Democrat, so they really should have interviewed a Republican, but I guess none of them would have anything to do with questioning capital expenditures and this type of thing. This guy is a Democrat from Texas who has been pushing for federal legislation protecting patients from surprise hospital bills. Said in a statement that he supports doing the same for ambulance bills. Meanwhile, patients do have the right to refuse an ambulance ride as long as they are over 18 and mentally capable. Again, when you're in pain, I don't know how much mentally capable you are. That to me is not the free market. If I'm mangled up or I'm broken, whatever, I'm feeling chest pains and I'm panicking, or I'm getting dizzy and I'm fainting, and an ambulance turn up, I'm not gonna be like, I ain't getting that ambulance. How much is it gonna cost? Give me the upfront price. And then if you tell me it's $3,000 something, I'm like, forget about it. I'll go in the ambulance. I'll pay the $3,000 something because I'm fainting here, or I'm having a pain in my chest, or I have a broken leg or arm. I'm not in the mental state to negotiate price and to talk about what is the true value or what is the capitalistic right, or am I patriotic? I'm gonna jump in the ambulance and I'm gonna pay the price after the fact. But my main aim right now is not that the service is worth $3,000 something if it's taking me, say where I'm living right now, I'm 8.5 miles literally from the hospital, or I think 9 miles solid, because I've started to go up that hill. So I'm 9 miles from the hospital, and I'm in a pain, and I don't know if I can drive. I physically can't drive, so I can't take myself. I'm not going to really even risk saying I'm going to call Uber, which probably is a good idea, because it's going to be cheaper. I'm going to be like, I'm in pain. I can't think straight. I'm going to go in that ambulance. No, I'm going to go in the ambulance, and for that 9-mile ride, they're going to send me a bill, $3,000. Say I'm in one of these insurance that they cover me, and they decide, oh, they ain't covering the whole thing. They probably cover half of it. So now I'm hooked for a trip that's not even worth $200. Not even, okay, if you go by the Medicaid, it's only worth probably $500. And now I'm on hold for probably $2,000. So now $2,000 I owe for a trip that's not even $500 that my insurance company will cover. And this now is happening because we deem it best that we can't fix no health because we have to allow massive profits, because that's apple pie like America like apple pie. It's a weird setup. So that's why I say sometime in life when people say, why does God allow this or why does God allow that? I say, God ain't allow nothing. God didn't decide. I said this is the way things are supposed to go, and that we should have systems that make people that if they ever get into trouble, they're done. If they ever get broke or they ever lose their job, they're done. Because we set the system up that you're penalized because guess what happened? The market demands. And as I say, how the market demands, you're sick and in pain. You're going to do whatever it is to get rid of the pain. Continue reading here. It says, meanwhile, patients do not have the right to refuse an ambulance ride as long as they are 18. As long as they have the right, they do have the right as long as they're 18 or mentally capable. You could just take a Uber, said Adler of the Schaefer Institute. But if you need an ambulance, there's little recourse to avoid surprise bills, he said, other than yelling at the insurance company after the fact or yelling at the ambulance company, which it is like wasting your time. And I'm sure you've been there before. So you can't take Uber if you're bleeding. I doubt that, right? Somebody tell me, probably one of you have done that. Because I'm thinking if you, say you had a slip and you hit yourself real hard and you cut yourself and you literally can't take yourself to the hospital, but you're not like mangled up. I don't think you could call Uber and go into somebody's car blooded up and bleeding all over the place or whatever. And I don't think it's even a safe thing, because what if you probably need some oxygen or something? I don't know. Or you need somebody to get through those lights faster because they have lights on their car. Would make no sense. Also, yelling and calling the insurance company and yell would not make sense, because think about it again. If a venture capitalist company owns the ambulance firm and the venture capitalist, you're going to call somewhere from New York to one of these venture capitalist company in Chicago or New York on Wall Street are you going to say to a guy that his only aim is not to take care of the sick? His aim is just, he's probably going to say, what are you talking about? Like, what? We own an ambulance company? We don't care about that. We just care about making money. We're not into no sick care. We're not no non-profit organization. We're not here because we didn't go to school to get our masters in business and management and all that so that we can take care of the poor and the sick. We're not followers of Jesus. What we're here to make money. And so you can call us and say, oh, can you help me with this bill? So and so you're going to call a customer service person or a supervisor. And you're going to just beat them up. Because that's all you do, just beating them up and harassing them as they're harassing you. Unless you just want to return the favor to them because that's what they signed up for when they took that job. But they have no choice over it because the person who is really rigging the system is somebody on Wall Street who, again, was responsible for the last economic downturn. And then they were responsible for paying Congress and Senate to bail them out. So if the type of thing that those guys do over Wall Street to American public, and they're the real enemies of America. Not probably so much the other enemies that they're fighting. What they do, you think they could care less about any of us who's in an ambulance thing and suffering and now getting this massive bill? They rig it so that you get that massive bill. That's what they want because they want to make phenomenal profit from owning a fleet of ambulances. This is fascinating. And this takes me to a thought that as I look at this thing I keep having. Why is it that the church, with a nonprofit mandate, has abdicated its services or its work in the society because we were the one that's supposed to be doing the work of Jesus to help the sick and the lame and the maimed and the blind? We're the ones supposed to be doing this type of service from a non-profit point of view. In other words, that we just do it just enough to cover the cost and the continued operation and restoring of the vehicles and stuff like that. We're the ones supposed to be doing that type of work. And what we have done, we have made all our churches and the people that goes to our church worshipers instead of servants. Christ came and he made his disciples servants. We come and we follow the fallen churches, and we have become now a whole church of worshipers that we're about worshiping Jesus and making fools of ourselves instead of focusing on what Christ called us to do, which is what? To be servants of our fellow human being. What is needed is instead of all these venture capitalist companies buying up these ambulance services when they run into financial problems, it should be people with compassion for their fellow human being. You're never going to stop Wall Street from being vultures because that's what they sign up for in their life's work. Their aim in life is to make phenomenal profit. But we were supposed to be one to be doves. And as doves, harmless as doves, but we're supposed to be wise as serpent. We're supposed to go in and say, we're going to help on some people here by relieving this type of wickedness that's going on in our society and take over some of these ambulance services and these various different services and run them and just run them with the regular profit that, that is deemed by even the government to say should be given or should be gained. And not have these venture capitalists, these vultures. These people are there to destroy America. They're destroying the core of America because they're making America all about profit and no compassion, no heart, no care for the poor and the sick. And they're going to continue to do what they're doing because they always did that. Human beings are always greedy for money. And love of money is the root of all evil. This is what's going on here. But there'll be somebody that has Jesus in their heart, somebody that loves the poor and the sick, that need to pull together with some other somebodies and say, hey, look, we need to, even if we have one ambulance company or one little hospital, one little whatever, we're going to help the poor. We're not doing it because we want to become multi-billionaires and millionaires so that we can live large off the suffering and the pain of knowing that somebody dying from prostate cancer have to be fighting a medical bill for $7,000 for a trip from one hospital to the next. And the person is dying, and this is what America deems, well, capitalism is great. And don't question it, because if you question it, you're un-American. You might be un-American, but at least have some heart, So I'll question this type of madness because this is just immoral darkness. People worry about all the stupidity with the Illuminati and the Jesuits and stuff like that. These are the real evil people that in our society that love money too much and are destroying the fabric of the society with their evil, greedy self. So I pray that somebody may gain some, not only some hope, but some vision as we continue to move forward and try to build something for somebody, to bless somebody. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, again for your love towards us and the blessings, dear Lord, of knowing indeed the only true God. May you be with us as we go through the rest of this day. May you guide us along, and may you try to always teach us ways to be wise in this world as we are living among some serious wolves. May you bless us, we pray, for Christ's sake. Amen. Thanks again for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow morning, where we should talk about current events. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.